Hello and welcome back to my channel. In this week's interview we have Frankie Gray, who is a publishing director at Transworld. Please be sure to reach out to me or Frankie if you're looking to get into the publishing industry and need a little helping hand. I hope you find this video useful and enjoy.
Hi everybody, I'm Frankie Gray and I'm Publishing Director for Commercial Fiction at Transworld, which is part of Penguin Random House. So my job is quite varied, as there are a number of different strands to my role. That of editor, so looking after my books and my authors, the role as sort of leading the commercial fiction team, and also as a manager. The first part of that, I guess, is my role as editor, and I publish quite a broad list of authors ranging from crime and thriller to women's fiction to book club, issue-driven fiction, as well as some non-fiction. And my authors include Sophie Kinsella and Ruth Jones, Stuart McBride and Alison Hammond. So in this part of my job, the day-to-day tasks are quite varied. It could be editing a new manuscript, briefing a cover, which is where the editor provides the designer with an outline for the book, a target audience and design ideas, so that they can go away and come back with amazing designs. Writing cover copy is something I do as well, presenting my author's books, so at either internal or external meetings, project managing the publication, so that can be like liaising with colleagues in sales, marketing and publicity, speaking to my wonderful authors and their agents. Yeah, and I guess new acquisitions as well as a key part of the role, so reading submissions, talking to agents and literary scouts about kind of what's coming up, what's hot, and if I read something and love it, pitching it at our internal acquisitions meeting when the decision is made whether to go for it or not, and then potentially pitching to a prospective new author and taking part in an auction if that's the way that it goes. And then the second part of my role, which is the kind of, I guess, is more the sort of strategy. So I run the commercial fiction team, so I oversee the commercial fiction strategy for Transworld. So this entails sort of, I guess, thinking about the list as a whole. So broadly, what do we want our commercial fiction to achieve? Where are we now? Where do we want to be? That can entail kind of strategy meetings and presentations, as well as some sort of quiet, reflective thought, I guess, to kind of gather my thoughts on the idea, as well as heads of department meetings. And then last but by no means least, part of my job that I really love is managing a team of brilliant editors. So that involves kind of regular catch-up meetings, reading submissions, which if one of them wants to acquire something and would like a second opinion, and just generally really being on hand to help howsoever I can. I studied English literature at Edinburgh University. I guess I had always loved books, really. I'd loved reading, and so came out of university and thought, gosh, publishing might be a fun career. And I didn't really know much about kind of the different jobs within publishing and what it entailed. And in my final year at Edinburgh, my mum had picked up a copy of the London paper, which was a kind of old free newspaper, and in it was an interview with the agent Kath Summerhays, and I didn't really know that literary agent was a job before that, and it was just really interesting to hear about kind of the job of an agent. So I actually kind of I googled Kath and then sent her an email and just said kind of, have you got any tips for someone wanting to get into publishing? And she very kindly responded, and I then applied for work experience at William Morris Endeavour, as it was then, WME, and did a period of work experience, and then very fortunately a job came up a couple of months later as the London office assistant. So that was sort of working across the books department, books, TV and music. Be on reception, I would be photocopying, making tea, and reading submissions as well for the books team, and kind of supporting the two agents and their assistants however I kind of was needed. And it was a brilliant grounding, I guess, in kind of the business of publishing and of books. So I did that for about a year, and then I got a job as an editorial assistant at Headline, and that was my kind of first entry point, I guess, to a publishing house. It's quite an interesting question, actually. I think the only skill that someone really has to have is a love of reading, genuine passion and enthusiasm for it, because there is a hell of a lot of reading. There really is. If you love books and you love reading, then that's all you need really to get into publishing. If I kind of was pushed and had to think of a couple of other things, I guess one thing would be communication skills. I think as an editor, you're sort of, obviously there's communicating to an author your thoughts on their manuscript and doing that in a way that's clear and constructive and helpful. And then the sort of internally, I suppose, in terms of communicating your vision for a publication. So here's the manuscript, this is what you think the cover should look like, this is what you think publication day should look like, and this is what you think is possible. That said, you don't have to have it when you start in publishing. I think the early years of my career were spent listening, like kind of absorbing as much as I possibly could and learning, and I wouldn't say I had those communication skills necessarily when I joined publishing. It was just something that I gained over time, but it is useful to have those eventually. And then I guess finally, sort of specific in a way, I guess, to the role that I'm doing now, I suppose sort of prioritization. There's the kind of at any one time or any given day I could have several really quite urgent things that need my attention. So having the ability, I suppose, to just break it down, work out what you're going to do next and move forward. Otherwise it's just kind of rewriting your to-do list 10 times and being sort of completely stalled by that. I've done it. I do it still sometimes. But I think it is a useful sort of skill. And again, with the communication skills, you gain it over time. It's not something that you kind of come into working life, come into publishing and immediately know how to prioritise. How many meetings do I normally have? The simple answer is like a lot. In any given week I could have, somewhere between 15 and 20 hours of meetings in a week. So some of those will be the regular weekly meetings, so our acquisitions meeting, our cover meeting, editorial meeting where we talk about new submissions, or some of my kind of individual team catch-ups which will happen every week. And then there will be more kind of ad hoc meetings, so a call to talk through an edit with an author, chairing a focus meeting for one of my publications, strategy meetings, and then agent meetings, so whether that's kind of a lunch, a coffee, a call, whatever it might be. It sounds like a lot, and it is. There's kind of a lot to fit into a day when you've got that many hours in meetings, but I really love the meetings. I love the chance to talk to people about books, which is kind of what it all boils down to in the end. Yeah, I think I found the Zoom meetings probably quite hard. I think with that volume of them, my eyes just hurt. I think it's part of the joy of publishing really, is connecting with people who also love books. So someone wanting to be an editor, honestly, I would just say read. Someone gave me that advice early on in my career, and it really is the most important thing. Read widely. I think also read outside of your usual reading tastes sometimes, just to sort of see what other books are out there. And also spend time, I think, as part of that process, thinking, reflecting on what you thought of the book. What did you think worked well and what didn't work so well. It's just kind of starting to flex that muscle, because obviously once you're an editor, that's your role. You are helping an author to understand what it's like to be a first-time reader for their book, which they will never know because they've written it. And so you're just providing that role and then communicating to them what you think needs to change, what you think is working very well. So just starting to get used to doing that as you're reading widely will stand you in good stead for then when you come to be an editor. And obviously there's a lot of time in the course of your experience as an editorial assistant and as an assistant editor to start to flex that muscle too, but it's something that you can be doing whenever you're reading. And then to somebody who would like to have, I guess, a more strategic role, a kind of bigger picture role within a publishing house, I think I would just say pay attention, listen, think about what's happening in the market. So just simply what's selling. Why do you think that is? Is it the cover? Is it a particular kind of trend at the moment for a certain kind of book? I guess Uplit would have been an example of that, where there was kind of suddenly a sort of real profusion of books that spoke to that desire to feel good at the end of finishing reading a book. And then also pay attention kind of within your publishing house. What do you think works well? Do you think a meeting is particularly effective? Do you think a process is particularly effective? And then also what could be done differently? Are there things that you think should change? And then think about how you would go about making that change, because once you're in that kind of strategic role, that's the sort of oversight that you have. But even before that, I think certainly at Transworld, and I would hope at lots of publishing houses, people want to hear, if you have thoughts about how things could be done differently, then share them. Oh, it's so hard to choose a book that everyone should read. I would say in the kind of, I suppose in the spirit of this editorially themed conversation, I would say On Writing by Stephen King. I'd been meaning to read it for years, and I finally read it at Christmas, like last Christmas. It's just so helpful. It's an easy read. It's kind of quite a quick, compelling read actually, and it gives such helpful pointers for writers. So I guess to some degree it's a useful book for writers, but also for editors, because it kind of lays out, I suppose, the markers of a very good book, and how to get there, which is always helpful knowledge for an editor to have to help their author along the way.